Okay, so yeah, we've had the sixth episode of Matt Ehret's series on Tesla, and it is getting a lot more interesting now. It's getting down to actual um, ideas of Tesla's rather than people that he knew and so on and so forth. And so it's possible to actually examine some of the ideas being put forward here in a way that is worth taking a few notes and so on and so forth. So I'm going to have to read a bit out of this. So anyway, there's a famous photograph of Tesla sitting in front of one of his pancake coils reading a book, and this has often been thought that this was a book by a natural philosopher, a Jesuit natural philosopher called Boscovich. Boscovich held views on things that were very similar to some of Leibniz's ideas. He was, in a sense, trying to kind of square the circle between Leibniz and Newton to some degree. It was quite, he made a few discoveries and whatnot, and contributed to various ways that people often see as anticipating the theory of relativity and that kind of thing. But as it happens, I think this book is by Maxwell, which does contain bits on Boscovich, and it does look like Tesla had a copy of Boscovich, but the edition is one that was printed after the photograph was taken, so it certainly isn't that book. Anyway, in Matt's latest thing, he compares unfavourably Tesla's views on the ether and space with that of Einstein's. And according to Matt Ehret, the Einstein is more in the tradition of Leibniz, and Tesla is in the tradition of some kind of spiritualist crackpots, basically. But anyway, what we've got is really a series of quotes here, so I'm going to have to read them out just to see if this theory about Tesla being out of keeping with what Leibniz was saying is true. So let's start with Leibniz. What did Leibniz think about space? What was space? Now, Leibniz thought of space as an idea. It was an idea. It's not a thing. It is an idea, and space as such has no properties. Space stood to objects populating it as members of a family stand to their genealogy. The genealogy isn't a thing that stands over and above the members of a family tree. It's just the relation that they have to one another. It's not something that exists independently of that. And this seems to be Leibniz's view of space. Now, obviously we've got a situation here where we're talking about ether and space, and I think it's important to bear in mind that the two things are not the same thing. Now, let's get to Einstein and his view of the ether. I'm not sure whether it is in conflict with Leibniz's view or not, to be honest, because it's I find it a little bit confusing and unclear what Einstein thought about ether in relation to space. I mean, we know that Einstein thought that space-time can be curved in the presence of massive bodies. So it certainly wasn't an idea, which for Leibniz, space was an idea. You can't curve an idea. So Einstein does seem to be conflicting with Leibniz here on the face of it. Now Einstein, his view of the ether was that the ether of general relativity is a medium which is itself devoid of all mechanical and kinematical qualities, but helps determine mechanical and electromagnetic events. Elsewhere, he says, to deny ether is ultimately to assume that empty space has no physical quality whatever. The fundamental facts of quantum mechanics do not harmonise with this view. So this is what I mean. I find it a little bit confusing because it's almost like he's conflating his talk of the ether and his talk of space here. So take that as you will. Elsewhere, he says, recapitulating, we may say that according to the general theory of relativity, space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, therefore, there exists an ether, but this ether may not be endowed with the quality characteristic of ponderable media, as consisting of parts which may be tracked through time. The idea of motion may not be applied to it. So again, it's a little not that clear to me how this would be compatible to Leibniz's view of space. Einstein seems to be saying that space is a medium with physical qualities, yet not those characteristic of ponderable media. So it's like a kind of physical plenum without dimensions in itself, such that it could be subdivided in and of itself into parts existing in time. Now Tesla's idea of the ether is much more clear and clearly distinct from his idea of space, as we'll see. Tesla's idea of the ether is seemingly more in keeping with Leibniz's. So you take this, the primary substance thrown into infinitesimal whirls of prodigious velocity becomes gross matter. The force subsiding, the motion ceases and matter disappears, reverting to the primary substance. So for a start, this is not really that characteristic of someone who's like an arch empiricist who only trusts the senses. It's like, as Matt Ehret said elsewhere, it might be called highly speculative and completely at odds with what we perceive with the senses, but maybe that's just me. According to this is Tesla again. According to adopted theory, every ponderable atom is differentiated from a tenuous, sort of fragile or vague fluid, filling all space merely by spinning motion as a whirl of water in a calm lake. By being set in motion, this fluid, the ether, becomes gross matter. Its movement arrested, the primary substance reverts to its normal state. It appears then possible for man, through harnessed energy of the medium and suitable agencies for starting and stopping ether whirls to cause matter to form and disappear. And he goes into some speculations on what this could all mean, which is quite out there but kind of interesting. To cause at will the birth and death of matter would be man's greatest deed, which would give him the mastery of physical creation, make him fulfill his ultimate destiny. So again, that's not really the words of a kind of anti-humanist individual who wants to stop human development in its tracks. He may have had some very, very dodgy ideas about eugenics and all that, but it does seem that he did believe in human progress, you know. I mean, it might be seen as slightly irreligious by some, but it depends on how you think God fits into all this. So maybe not. So Tesla also speaks directly to this subject of space. And here it's totally in keeping with Leibniz and the kind of things that Boscovich was saying as well as Kant, the same sort of idea that it's an idea. So Tesla says, I hold that space cannot be curved, i.e. what Einstein's talking about, for the simple reason that it can have no properties. It might as well be said that God can have properties. He has none, but only attributes, and these are of our own making. Of properties we can only speak when dealing with matter filling the space. To say that in the presence of large bodies space becomes curved is equivalent to stating that something can act upon nothing. I, for one, refuse to subscribe to such a view. Now, to me, this is completely in keeping with the following from Leibniz, so you can draw your own conclusions about this. So this is Leibniz. As for my own opinion, I have said more than once that I hold that space to be something merely relative, as time is, that I hold it to be an order of coexistences, as time is an order of successions. Pretty clear, and pretty clearly in line with what Tesla's saying. And elsewhere, space can only be an ideal thing, containing a certain order wherein the mind conceives the application of relations. So again, space is not something existing over and above the things populating it. So to me, this is indicative of the idea that somehow, you know, there is some relationship between Tesla, whether or not Tesla had actually even read Boscovich, we don't know. He owned a book by him, but according to some reports, it doesn't look like it was ever opened. So well, I've got a few books like that myself, to be honest. But anyway, it does look like that Tesla was very much in keeping with what Leibniz was saying. So it doesn't quite fit in with Matt Ehret's ideas. Although, you know, I think Matt Ehret's got a lot of good points about Tesla. He is a cult. There is a lot of cultish thinking around him, and it's probably not a healthy approach to his actual achievements in science, in my view. I don't see it as a reason to reject Tesla altogether, is my way of looking at it. And if we look at some of the stuff that's coming out on this Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project on YouTube, it does go into alchemy, it goes into some crazy stuff about, sacred geometry and that kind of thing, and Bob Greenier's dad was a Mason, you know. So you know, you can make of that what you will, but some of the things that Matt Ehret is saying, and kind of almost dismissing as sort of spooky, kind of crazy stuff that's put out there to mislead humanity, it does look for all the world to be there, evidenced in some of these SEM microscope live streams that you can just sit in and watch this stuff being revealed. I don't know what you would call the transmutation of elements in just water other than alchemy. If you want to call it something else, I suppose you can. If you want to think that it totally vindicates alchemy, you can do that as well. I'm sort of sitting on the fence a little bit over all that, I think, but it's all a little bit intriguing and fascinating, and I'm sure there's lots of assumptions that are all going to be proved wrong, as there are always with new discoveries. But to me, it's pretty evident that something like transmutation is going on. And if you look at one of the latest videos, we have an emissions testing device in the exhaust of a running generator, and out of it is coming pretty much the same air quality as the ambient air around. You know, virtually zero CO2. So you can explain that however you like, but to me it looks like carbon is being transmuted in situ into oxygen. And like I say, I did do a video prior to this and forgot to push the record button. So if I've said this already, then I'm repeating myself. But anyway, it does look like some of this idea about the ball lightning and this kind of coherent states of physical matter, or whatever you want to call it, is a little bit reminiscent of Leibniz's idea of the monads, and that, you know, if you think about the monads and their little windows into every other monad, then they're kind of like in a coherent state. Just a thought, but not sure if anyone's ever sort of thought about the possible links between Leibniz's monadology and the ball lightning thing and the exotic vacuum objects, but there you go, that might be a first. Anyway, we'll wait and see where this goes with Matt Ehret, but I think I have to say he's wrong about this idea that Tesla was completely antithetical to Leibniz, just on this idea of space alone. A little bit of a long one, sorry about that. I was rambling. It's been a long day. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.